At a high-end restaurant in New York, a young black waitress hears a commotion. A well-dressed French guest is being accused of skipping out on his bill. Unable to explain himself in English, as her manager grows angry and refuses to listen, she steps forward and speaks perfect. That simple act of kindness costs her the job. But what she doesn't know is that it's also the moment that will change her life in a way she never dared to dream. Before we dive into this story, let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts. The clink of silverware, the low hum of violins from the corner quartet, and the rustle of linen napkins filled the golden air of Belamonte's, one of uptown Manhattan's finest dining rooms. It was nearing 8 p.m., the peak of the Friday dinner rush, when the world seemed to shift from a polite murmur to a tight-laced choreography of wealth and status. Maya Bennett moved through it all like a silent melody. Her black shoes tapped softly on the marble floor, weaving between tables draped in white, her tray balanced like instinct between one hand and the curve of her hip. She wore her uniform neatly, white blouse buttoned high, black slacks creased razor-sharp, apron spotless. Her skin, a deep espresso tone, shimmered faintly under the soft chandeliers. Every motion she made was measured, respectful but not timid, as if she held a secret no one thought to ask about. She had been on her feet since 3 o'clock. She had counted quietly to herself the 12,000 steps it had taken to serve the high society of New York. But Maya never complained. Her mother always said, "Kindness is quiet. Keep walking forward." And that's what Maya did, shift after shift, with a whisper of grace and fire buried just beneath. Her table by the window had just complimented her on the Pinot Noir pairing when she heard it, a sharp voice breaking the rhythm of the room. "Sir, I already told you, if you don't pay, you can't just walk out." The voice belonged to Mr. Harris, the restaurant's manager, impeccably dressed, hair greased back like a banker from the 50s. His voice cut through the air like a cold wind. At the reception counter near the front, a tall silver-haired man in an elegant navy coat stood flustered, gesturing helplessly. His eyes were wide, palms open, his accent thick and lyrical, unmistakably French. "Vugel, you lost it, right?" Harris interrupted with a scoff so loud a few heads turned. "Lost the phone. Lost the wallet. Of course. How convenient." Maya's breath caught. Her hands instinctively gripped the edge of her tray tighter. The man looked utterly defeated. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't arguing. He was just trying desperately to explain. "Please," the man tried in broken English. "My friend, hotel. I need just one call." Harris shook his head, folding his arms like he was settling in for a long, righteous battle. "Sir, if you thought you could get a free meal by playing foreign, you came to the wrong place." The restaurant didn't pause. It never did. The violinists kept playing. Forks still tapped against porcelain. But a quiet discomfort spread like fog. Maya's heart hammered. She could see it, in the way the man swallowed hard, in the faint tremble of his hands. This wasn't a scam. This was someone lost in a city that didn't have time to listen. She took a step forward, then another. "Excuse me, Mr. Harris," she said, her voice steady but soft, velvet-laced with steel. He turned, eyebrows raised. "Bennett, this doesn't concern you, actually." Maya's eyes flicked to the Frenchman, then back. "It does. I speak French." A flicker of annoyance crossed Harris's face twisted, then something meaner appeared, like a man caught bluffing at poker. "Oh, now we're all translators," he snapped. "I told you, I've got this under control." "With respect," Maya said, her voice quieter now, "he's not trying to leave. He just wants to call someone. I can help him explain." "Back to your tables, Ma. That's an order." But she didn't move. The man looked at her, hope flickering behind tired eyes, and just like that, something rose inside her. Not anger. Not even rebellion. Just something right. She stepped closer, turning to the guest. She said gently, in perfect Parisian French, "JVU." His eyes filled. His shoulders dropped in relief, like someone had just returned his name to him. "Merci." Maya turned, pulled her small flip phone from her apron pocket, and handed it to him. She even dialed the number he dictated shakily. Then she reached into her coat hook near the host stand, pulled out her wallet, and laid a $20 bill on the counter. "This should cover the cab to the address," she said quietly. The man bowed his head. Harris's face was beet red. "You're dismissed," he hissed, trying to sound professional but failing. "Get your coat. You're done here." Maya's hands didn't shake. She simply nodded once, like a queen acknowledging the inevitable. As she walked toward the staff door, her head held high, the violin in the corner faltered just slightly, like even it knew something had shifted. And outside, the cold Manhattan wind kissed her cheek, but she felt warm. She had no idea the phone call she just made would soon change her entire life. The night had passed with a strange kind of stillness. Maya lay awake longer than she expected, the silence of her small Harlem apartment broken only by the rhythmic pulse of the radiator clanking in the corner like an old heartbeat. Her coat still smelled faintly of rosemary and roasted duck, the last table she had served before everything turned. By morning, the sky outside her window had traded its deep urban blue for a soft, cloudy gray. Light spilled across the worn wooden floor and landed on the kitchen table, where her mother sat sipping tea from a chipped porcelain mug, the same one Maya had glued back together 3 times now. Maya stirred a spoonful of honey into her mother's tea, her own thoughts too tangled to drink anything at all. "You did the right thing," her mother said, voice low and a little hoarse from the flu that refused to leave. "That man needed someone. You were someone." Maya didn't answer right away. Her fingers traced the rim of the mug. She hadn't told her mother about being fired. Not yet. Not while their medical bills sat unopened in the drawer by the fridge. She would figure something out. She always did. That was the rhythm of her life. Survive first. Feel later. Then the phone rang. Not her personal cell, that would have lit up with a cracked screen and a familiar buzz. No, this was the house phone. The old landline that almost never rang anymore. It let out a shrill burr that sounded more startled than alarming. Maya exchanged a glance with her mother, then reached for the receiver. "Hello?" Pause. Then a male voice, smooth and clipped, with a faint accent. English, but polished. "Expensive. Good morning. Is this Maya Bennett speaking? I represent Silverbridge International. One of our senior executives has requested to speak with you personally. Would you be available to come in for a meeting this morning?" Maya blinked. I'm sorry. Silverbridge? Yes, ma'am. If you could arrive by 10 o'clock, someone will be waiting for you in the executive lobby. Buildings on 68th and West End. Bring ID. The line clicked off. No explanation. No details. Maya slowly placed the receiver back on its cradle, her fingers hovering for a moment before falling away, like a piano pianist releasing the final note. "Who was it?" her mother asked, brow furrowed gently. "I'm not sure," Maya said, her voice quieter than she meant. "But I think I'm going uptown." The cab ride was surreal. The driver played jazz, slow, meandering saxophone drifting through the quiet as the buildings outside grew sleeker, taller, shinier with each passing block. Maya sat with her coat folded neatly over her lap, the only nice pair of shoes she owned pressed tightly together on the cab floor. When the car pulled up to a tall glass tower with gold signage gleaming in the winter light, she felt her breath catch. This wasn't just a company. Silverbridge was the company. International consulting. Global strategy. Major contracts with Europe and Africa. She had walked past it 100 times. Never once thought she'd step inside. The lobby swallowed her in marble and hush. A uniformed doorman opened the glass for her. Reception smiled, asked for her name, made a quick call, and offered her a seat on a velvet bench near a wall of orchids that looked far too elegant to be real. She didn't wait long. Bennett, a tall man with silver hair and a familiar face, approached. He wore a tailored navy suit, the same one from the night before, except now he wasn't a lost guest. He was Lauren Shiowalier, senior executive and board member of Silverbridge International. "I apologize for the surprise," he said, extending a hand warmly, "but I very much wanted to speak with you in person. May we?" She followed him down a quiet hallway, past a sea of glass offices and low murmurs. The world here moved slower, smoother, like everything had already been decided. Inside a corner office with a skyline view, he gestured for her to sit. "Bennett, last night you showed me something I thought I had lost sight of, the quiet strength of good people." Maya remained still, her hands folded in her lap. "You didn't know who I was. You didn't ask for anything. But you helped me, not just as a guest, but as a person." He leaned forward slightly. "And in doing so, you helped this company. My presence at that dinner was part of a very sensitive contract negotiation. If things had gone differently, it could have cost us dearly." He paused, studying her. "Tell me, Miss Bennett, what did you study in school?" "Economics," she said after a beat. "Minor in languages. But I dropped out my second year. My mom got sick. I had to work." "And yet," he said, clearly impressed, "you speak flawless French. Any others?" "Spanish. Arabic. Some Mandarin." There was a long moment of silence. Then Lauren smiled, a slow, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Miss Bennett," he said, standing, "how would you feel about starting again, this time, here?" Her breath caught. "Sir, I don't have a degree. Degrees are one thing. Integrity is another." He extended his hand once more. "We'll start you as an intern, if you're willing. The rest, we'll see where it goes." Maya stood, took his hand. The warmth of it was real. And in that moment, the world seemed to pause, not like something ending, but something just beginning. And while she didn't know it yet, the path she had just stepped onto would soon lead her deeper into the halls of ambition, betrayal, and justice. The elevator hummed softly as it rose. Maya stood quietly in the corner, her reflection faint in the mirrored panel behind a row of polished brass buttons. Her new ID badge, clipped neatly to the lapel of her blazer, still felt unfamiliar, like wearing someone else's coat. But the name was hers. Maya Bennett. International intern. Silverbridge International. The badge didn't blink. It believed in her, more than most people in that building would. As the doors opened onto the 12th floor, the rhythm of the company changed. The pace here was quick, but hushed, the kind of efficient silence that spoke in glances, in keyboards tapping, in heels clicking across carpet. People moved with purpose. Tailored suits. Pressed collars. Every detail, intentional. Maya stepped out not tentatively but mindfully. She adjusted her posture, walked straight, and smiled gently at the receptionist behind the glass desk. "First day?" the woman asked with a polite lift of her brow. "Yes ma'am," Maya replied, her voice warm but reserved. "I'm assigned to Mrs. Dawson's team." The woman's eyes flicked over Maya's ID. Something in her expression shifted, not cruel, just cautious, like someone squinting at unfamiliar handwriting. "Good luck," she said simply, and buzzed the door open. It clicked with a sound that somehow felt more like permission than welcome. Inside, Mrs. Elaine Dawson, the team lead for international operations, greeted her with a nod as brief as a blinking light, mid-40s, crisp blonde bob, posture as straight as a ruler. She didn't offer her hand. "Mrs. Bennet, you'll be stationed at the front desk by the conference wing," she said, flipping through papers as she spoke. "Answer phones, keep the lobby neat, handle errands. No access to core documents unless asked. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am," Maya said evenly. She followed instructions without complaint. The desk was small, tucked between a printer and a water cooler, away from the strategic meetings and project rooms. A few junior associates passed her without eye contact. One even asked, gently but unmistakably, if she was from facilities. Maya answered with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Each morning, she arrived early. She greeted everyone with calm grace, even if no one replied. She brewed coffee, organized files, and wiped fingerprints from glass surfaces without being asked. But more than that, she listened. She paid attention to project briefings through the walls, read discarded notes left in the bin by careless hands, and studied every printed agenda she was allowed to distribute. The silence that wrapped her wasn't emptiness, it was observation. At night, she stayed late, pretending to wait for a delayed ride while she read through binders abandoned in the copy room. She created her own timeline of the West Africa logistics project, the one all departments seemed to fumble through, and quietly began drafting her own improvement plan. There were no complaints, no outbursts. Only stillness, only focus, like water carving through stone. One afternoon, as Maya was restocking the kitchen with bottled water, a junior associate named Brian approached her. His shirt was wrinkled in a way that suggested last-minute preparation, not overwork. "Hey, new girl," he said, nodding toward her badge. "You speak any foreign languages or is that just for show?" Maya turned slowly, her tone polite but laced with purpose. "I speak 5, she replied. "But I also know how to replace toner without causing a fire, if that's what you're asking." Brian raised his eyebrows, half amused, half disarmed. He chuckled but didn't apologize. "Touché," he muttered, and walked off. Later that week, as whispers swirled about an upcoming meeting with an international client, one the company had nearly lost once before, Maya knew the time was nearing. She wasn't aiming to leap. She was waiting for the right door to swing open, not by invitation, by need. She finished her plan, printed it, proofed every word, bound it in a soft blue cover, and slipped it into an envelope labeled only with a single line, "For review. Feedback welcome." She didn't write her name on the cover. Instead, she placed it on the desk of the man who had once trusted her with a job, simply because she trusted a stranger with help. Mr. Laurent Chevalier. And then she went back to her desk by the water cooler, quiet, waiting, watching. What Maya didn't know was that others had noticed the envelope, and one of them had no intention of letting it reach its intended hands. The envelope had been placed carefully, almost ceremonially, on Mr. Chevalier's desk that Thursday evening. The office had long emptied, save for the soft hum of lights left on by habit and the faint buzz of cleaning carts rolling down the marble halls. Maya hadn't lingered. She simply placed the report where it belonged and walked away, letting her hope rest silently between the pages she had written. By the next morning, however, something felt altered. The building's usual rhythm had quickened. Conversations were sharper, coffee orders were shorter. Maya noticed it first in the way Brian passed by her desk, whistling a little tune, fingers drumming the side of his phone like someone who had stumbled onto something valuable he didn't earn. Then came the meeting memo, the one that made her heart pause. Client strategy meeting at 10 a.m. International partners arriving. All team leads and project assistants required. Mr. Chevalier attending. Maya reread the memo 3 times. She wasn't listed as required, of course, but her chest tightened nonetheless. By mid-morning the office shimmered with tension. Polished shoes tapped double time. Jackets were straightened twice. The glass-walled conference room filled with voices. Maya remained at her desk, close enough to hear the occasional phrase through the half-open door. Realignment proposal. New phase draft. The blue cover plan. Her stomach sank. She stood up slowly and walked toward the supply closet. It gave her a view, partial, distant, but enough. Through the narrow glass pane, she saw Brian holding a printed report with a familiar sky blue cover, flipping pages with one hand, gesturing with the other as if he had written every word himself. Beside him, Mrs. Dawson nodded, lips pursed in pretend approval, as if she too had known of the plan all along. Maya's fingers curled around the doorframe. Not once did they say her name. Not once did they look toward the desk where the idea had been born. What stung most wasn't the theft itself, it was the ease of it. How quickly her work had been separated from her worth. No protests, no questions. Just quiet erasure, as if her contribution had always belonged to someone else the moment it left her hands. She could have barged in. She could have shouted. But instead, Maya did what she had always done. She watched. She waited. Because soon, the questions began. The international client, a French-speaking delegation, had arrived earlier than expected. Their lead representative, a stern-faced woman with silver hair and keen eyes, listened to Brian's presentation with patient skepticism. She nodded politely, but Maya could see it in her expression, something didn't quite add up. When the representative began asking questions in French, the air in the room shifted. Brian blinked, smiled, then leaned toward Mrs. Dawson with a shrug that was supposed to be charming but looked more like panic. Dawson attempted a few awkward English responses peppered with misused French phrases that made the client squint. "Pardon me, s'il-vous plaît, qu'avez-vous dit?" the woman asked, her voice calm but sharp, like the tip of a knife wrapped in velvet. Neither Brian nor Dawson had an answer. And that was when the door opened. Maya had been bringing in a tray of water, a task assigned casually by Mrs. Dawson just before the meeting. Her timing, however, was no accident. She stepped into the room with her usual quiet grace, the glasses clinking softly as she approached. The client turned to her. "Excusez-moi," the woman said, tilting her head. "C'est vous?" Maya's eyes flicked to Dawson, then Brian. She saw a panic flash across their faces, not because she was about to. "Were presented this morning. I recognize the cadence, the structure, the strategy." He turned his gaze to Maya. "I know what you gave me, Miss Bennett, and I know why you didn't sign your name." Maya said nothing. Her hands rested, folded in her lap. Her face was calm, but her eyes shimmered faintly, not with fear, but with relief. Brian's voice broke in. "Sir, I didn't realize. I thought it was a draft left by someone else." "You thought wrong," Chevalier said, the steel returning to his voice. "And more importantly, you acted wrong." Mrs. Dawson opened her mouth to defend him, but Chevalier raised a hand. "This company does not reward theft. And we certainly do not reward silencing talent for the sake of preserving ego." He stood. "Effective immediately, your contracts are terminated. Security will escort you both out by end of day." The silence that followed was absolute. Brian sat slack-jawed. Dawson's face was stoned. But Maya exhaled slowly. Not in triumph, but in release. The weight she had carried, the silence, the doubt, the long hours unnoticed, all lifted in that moment. Chevalier looked at her once more. "Miss Bennett," he said, voice lowering with sincerity. "We'll speak again tomorrow. But for now, take the afternoon. You've earned far more than that." As Maya rose, she didn't glance at the two who were escorted out behind her. She didn't need to. Because justice, when it arrives slowly, lands with a quiet grace. And in her silence, she had rewritten the story. The next morning felt different, not because the sun rose any brighter, but because Maya stood beneath it a little taller. She stepped into the lobby of Silverbridge wearing the same coat she had worn on her first day. But this time, the security guard greeted her by name, and the receptionist offered a warm smile that wasn't practiced or forced. Even the elevator seemed to glide more smoothly beneath her feet, as if it too recognized her right to ascend. When the doors opened on the 12th floor, she expected a brief nod from Mr. Chevalier, maybe a formal letter acknowledging her new position. But instead, his assistant guided her down a different corridor, past her old desk by the water cooler, past the conference rooms, into a corner suite that overlooked the city skyline. On the glass door was a gold plaque, freshly affixed. Maya Bennett, International Strategy Coordinator. The title shimmered, understated, but undeniable. Inside the office, a modest desk faced the window. A small potted plant sat on the windowsill. And on the desk, a folder, this time bearing her name, typed in bold, unmistakable font, alongside a handwritten note from Mr. Chevalier. You were always meant to be seen. But Maya's story didn't pause at the title. She didn't stop at the office she was never meant to reach. With her promotion came responsibility, and she embraced it the only way she knew how, with the same quiet strength that had carried her through unnoticed hallways. In the months that followed, she built a name not just as a brilliant strategist, but as someone who opened doors for others like her, voices too often unheard. She launched an internal mentorship program for underrepresented hires. She advocated for community scholarships. And soon, she founded the Bridge Collective, a nonprofit that provided job training and language education to low-income families, focusing especially on women of. Every Friday evening after work, she taught a free business literacy class at the local community center. Her mother, now stronger and finally well, often waited at the back of the room with a warm smile and a thermos of sweet tea, proud in the quiet way mothers are, the kind that sees everything and says only what matters. One crisp autumn afternoon, Maya stood before a crowd gathered at the ribbon cutting of the Bridge Collective's new headquarters, a modest sunlit space filled with books, hope, and second chances. Chevier was there, standing among volunteers and clients, hands clasped behind his back, wearing the same quiet expression he had when she first translated for a man no one else listened to. As the ribbon was cut and applause erupted, a young girl no older than 10 ran up to Maya holding a notebook filled with drawings. She pointed to one. It was a picture of a woman standing beside a door made of gold, holding it open for others behind her. Beneath the drawing were the words, "Miss Maya is magic." Maya knelt down, smiled, and whispered, "No, sweetheart, I'm not magic. I'm just someone who didn't stop walking." That night, as the lights of the city blinked awake and laughter echoed from the new center's hallways, Maya stood beneath a glowing sign that bore her name, not as a symbol of success, but as a reminder that dignity needs no permission. Because kindness, real, brave, unglamorous kindness, leaves a trail. And sometimes the trail leads not only to justice, but to something greater, a place where the forgotten are remembered, the quiet are heard, and the doors that were once closed stay open for good. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.